Nathan Manou. How
Woody,
are you?
I'm fantastic.
Great. We're going to start this in the usual way that we start these podcasts,
Okay.
which is 60 seconds of fun. We're starting now. Best restaurant in New York.
Wu's Wonton King.
Most frustrating app.
Grinder.
Least favourite colour.
Magenta.
Wow, I don't even know what colour that is. Favourite brand right now?
Total Luxury Spa.
Favourite design agency?
Porta Rocha.
Good answer.
I'm going to get in trouble for that.
Do I look like a rat or a fish?
You look like a beautiful fish.
Great. City everyone should know that isn't New York.
A city. Marrakesh.
And your career in a noise.
Ah!
What a wonderful... There we go.
There we go. That was 60 seconds.
I think we actually did quicker than 60 seconds.
Fast and pleasurable.
But some of those were very quick. Impressive. Also, I don't actually know what... Wait, was it your favourite app or favourite brand? Anyway, we'll move on. Thank you for joining us on the Untalented podcast. This is my first one hosting, so that's exciting. And I'm really happy that you made time to see us, so thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here.
We will start with exploring a little bit more about Nath, which I think everyone will want to hear. But this is the way that we consistently start. But who was the first person who ever made you feel talented?
It's interesting. When I was thinking about that question, there's the first person that made me feel talented, and then there was certain language that people have used in my career that have made me feel talented.
Mm-hmm.
So the first person that made me feel talented, it's a bit of a cliche, but it goes back to my second year teacher, Mrs. Peterson.
Okay.
Just the presence of this teacher, and I think this is evident to all of the good teachers that we've had in our lives in shaping us and making us who we are. But I often credit and go back to me as this sort of 8-year-old, sort of wide-eyed and ready to sort of conquer the world, and having a mentor and a guide help guide my creativity and help guide my beautiful chaos in a gorgeous way. You know, on that sort of subject of beauty, it was when I moved to New York from San Francisco in 2013, I was interviewing with a consultancy based out of London and New York, and the head of the consultancy, who's a good friend now, she said something to me at the end of that meeting, which was, "You have a beautiful brain." And it's the first time anyone's ever said that combination of words to me before. And whenever I'm ever self-doubting myself, I think about that, and I'm like, okay, cool. I have a beautiful brain. This is a beautiful way to... That's a beautiful compliment to give to somebody.
Absolutely. I think that those are the things that you're like, sort of rock you a bit. You're like, whoa, okay, that's the first time anyone's ever said anything like that to me. And beauty is like often very like visual, isn't it?
Yes.
So, you know, that's how we perceive beauty in lots of ways. And to say that is, and I also think you have a beautiful brain.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that it seems like a consistent theme that people talk about teachers or early kind of educators as being the person that made them feel talented. Do you think that was like there's innocence there, but do you think that was from like did that inspire you to be more creative, or was it just like she's really, you know, she's grounded me and inspired me to be who I am?
This human being literally inspired me to be creative across so many different mediums. You know, if I think about back then, it was through music, it was through drama, it was through art. So much of that, of having her as a champion and someone in my corner. Yeah. I wish I was able, looking back a little bit sometimes in some points in my 20s, I wish I was able to conjure her spirit to sort of get me through some hard times. But this is the joy of growing up, you know, and the joy of consciousness and perspective is now I can look back and, you know, identify her as a human being. And, you know, as I move forward as a creative person, harnessing that energy, she actually passed a couple of years ago, which is really sad as well.
Yeah, that is sad.
But I agree. Yeah. These kind of angels or figureheads in our life, you know, the impact that they have on us when we're younger, you know, they're really helpful resources, you know, as we're an adult, because I think we often forget some of that childlike energy and get a little bit too caught up in the seriousness of life.
Absolutely. I think so there's an amazing, he's like a resilience coach that we work with Unknown, and he did this exercise where you kind of like built a person that is your kind of spirit in certain, so you can lean on like your, your like fighter mentality to like win new business, or and we named them, and like do you feel like you kind of you utilize the spirit of, I've forgotten the person's name, but Mrs. something wrong.
Her name is Mrs. Peterson.
Mrs. Peterson, to like bring yourself to certain like aspects of your life.
Well, not another cliche, but when talking about these different aspects of us, right? We talk about Walt Whitman, the fact that we contain multitudes, and of those multitudes, there's parts of us. We don't just exist on a singular dimension. There's multiplicity to us. So being able to identify that and call that out, as I go through my day, that's a superpower that I try and utilize.
Yeah, epic. Like, I love stuff like that. It grounds you, doesn't it? And I guess sort of segueing into you today, as a successful strategist, if that's what we want to call you. I think that, how do you bring yourself into, how do you exist as a strategist? What makes a strategist now? Because I think that job title has evolved massively in the last 10 years, probably as you've been doing it. I think strategy is taking it exceptionally seriously at many levels. How do you think that sort of scene has changed since you've been in the strategic world?
It's funny. I haven't recently thought about what it was when I first started.
Yeah.
When I first started, it was basically 2 or 3 British men working in an agency, and that was kind of strategy, essentially.
Yeah.
I still remember my first strategy internship was I had to wear a suit.
Okay.
Which is crazy to think of brand strategy in that function, wearing a suit. And it wasn't a stuffy suit kind of expression, but it was definitely a little bit more formal compared to what it is now. I think the one thing that has remained consistent, regardless as the definition of strategy continues to change, is, I think one of the most innate characters that makes a good strategist is just a ferocious curiosity.
Absolutely.
A ferociousness to want to devour the world around them. Some strategists may want to devour data. Some strategists may want to devour the human experience from a more of an anthropological standpoint. Some may really sort of want to devour culture. I think a good strategist can do a bit of both. There's power in being a generalist and being able to sort of, code switch. Because in many ways, a good strategist is a chameleon.
100%. I think they're probably the most hybrid in terms of, thinking of any discipline across, that creative sphere, if we want to call it that. Because you have to... A good strategist could work across, campaign work, or good brand work, or experiential stuff. I think there's a variety of touch points that a good strategist has to think about and consider. Whereas I don't think maybe for a designer, as an example, or a copywriter, strategy and copywriting are very close together. But I agree. I think there's and. What do you think, you've worked in across a variety of disciplines. I know that branding is something that you've done quite consistently after being at Mother Design. But what gets in the way of that process from a strategic stance of like good work?
I think size of environment that you work in can be a barrier sometimes. I definitely, working in the design realm versus working in some of the bigger advertising agencies that I've worked in my career, the ability when you're working in a smaller studio setting is everyone is committed to rolling up their sleeves. Everyone is wearing multiple hats. Everyone needs to be a Swiss Army knife. For some people, they want to be a cog in a machine and have a really clear role, and that's the way that they like to work. Me personally, to answer your question, being in that smaller environment and being with a group of people that are committed to doing great work and that are committed to wearing different hats, all in the common goal of doing that great work, for me, that's great. That's what I like, in terms of surveying my career in the different environments. I've been really lucky to work in some pretty cool, companies
Yeah.
with a variety of very different cultures and sizes. Everything from, multiple hundreds to, under 20.
Yeah.
So that's what where I'm at currently, that kind of smaller, a little bit more malleable, a little bit more intimate, that's what I think leads to great work.
Yeah, I think we work in very different kind of disciplines, but especially with being at Unknown, you feel like you're part of a crew that is on the same journey. I think I've worked in bigger agencies in the past, and you kind of get lost in you don't care about what Jim in finance is up to because you're so disconnected from that person, Whereas I think that when you're in a smaller team, you're prepared to fight for the cause of making good shit happen. And I think that, I definitely resonate with that feeling. I think we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but would you consider yourself a creative?
For me personally, and me telling you this right now, absolutely.
Yeah.
A mentor of mine and a creative director that I used to work with, she used to say that a true creative is someone that creates art that goes out in the world. That art can take a multitude of different forms.
Yeah.
It can be a meal. It can be a poem. It can be a song. It could be a screenplay. I do think it's more than a paragraph in a deck.
Yeah.
So in terms of my propensity for creativity and how I express that in the world, absolutely.
Yeah.
I am more than just someone who crafts decks and gets in a room and talks about the power of brands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were sort of chatting a little bit around you considering yourself a creative, which you do. A creative, yes. I think that consistently when speaking to strategists, when I have, I think there is this potential conflict between creative and strategy. Have you experienced have you felt that being in different agencies?
Let me reframe this. I will say in my career, the best work that I have been a part of at any agency, best campaigns, best design systems, they've always been when strategy and creative are working in sync together.
Yeah.
When there's discord,
Yeah.
it can be beautiful, but it may not necessarily hit the sort of the same resonance that when you're in harmony together.
Yeah.
I often think about some of those moments, and I just think about that synchronicity between, either myself and my strategy team or the creative team, both whether it be at an advertising agency and working with, advertising creatives or working with designers. When we're in sync and when we're in the pocket together, when we're in a state of flow, the work always comes out exceptionally better.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I guess that kind of is that is true across various disciplines, right?
Yeah.
When there's aggravation or conflict, I think that good things can, as you say, there is beautiful things that can happen in like a conflict, because I think you're touching on points that that need to be spoken about, or that but I think when there's too much aggravation there, it can cause juts out that don't ultimately create good creative.
But good work needs that. It needs that level of friction.
Yeah.
I still remember, a couple of years ago, our, executive creative director, me and him were in a corner, sort of, speaking passionately with each other, trying to crack a big idea for a pitch. And some other people were a bit concerned about the volume and the way that we were conversing with each other. And he made it pretty clear. He's like, through this conversation, through this interaction, through this passion being exchanged, we are making the work better. We are getting to a better place.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it can't just be all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows and always in agreement. Yes, being agreeable is important. But, when giving the right fucks, sometimes you got to stand up for something. When standing up for something and ensuring that you're giving the right fucks, sometimes it can cause a little bit of friction.
Yeah.
But it's about how you work through it together.
I think so. And I think there's a difference between defending your opinion passionately and then not being able to let go of that. Because I think there's a level of emotional intelligence to be like, okay, I'm not going to win this battle, so I need to, chase the greater good in a weird way. But I think
that is a lesson that I have only just started to learn, but I'm happy that I'm finally learning it.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think that Yeah, because like there must be nothing more frustrating, I would think, as a creative strategist, whatever you want to call someone, of feeling like you've really cracked something, and then the team being like, no, I'm not sure about that. Like that's tough, I imagine.
Well, part of our job is, being that kind of whisperer, utilizing the power of influence, not only in our relationships with clients, in our relationships in research, but our relationships with our creatives to help open their minds to the possibility of what this strategic, cultural, business, creative opportunity may be. And how do we translate that through a communications platform? How do we translate that through a design platform? Being able to open their minds and work in sync, that at the end of the day is what we're meant to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's challenging, like rallying the troops and getting everyone in the same direction. I'm gonna sort of like change topic a little bit, but you said you moved from Australia to LA.
I moved from Australia to Miami, to Boulder, to San Francisco, to New York, to Amsterdam, to New York.
Yeah. So
there's lots of stops along the way, but this is a long period of time. It hasn't been in a short, condensed period of time.
Yeah. So thinking about New York, I know that's like the most recent part of your life. I know you've done a lot of traveling here.
The biggest chunk as well.
Yeah, the biggest chunk. What do you think's changed about you since being in New York?
When I think about New York, I came to New York in my late 20s, and now I'm getting into sort of close to a decade of what that would be. Let's not actually show my age. New York forces you to grow up, I feel, faster than other places. In some aspects, there's elements of Peter Pan syndrome I think we experience in this city.
Yeah.
Whether it be, the fact that maybe we'll have children later, maybe little things like buying a house may happen later than if we decided to finish high school and move straight to the suburbs, which there is nothing wrong with that life. Sometimes I look at my friends from high school and I go, that looks amazing. But I think the pace of this city, the level of stimulation, the pedigree of talent that we're working around, it does force us to grow up. And I think about the life that I've lived here and the different people that I No, let me rephrase that again. The person who I was, the person who I've been, the person who I'm becoming. I look back at all those different versions of myself, and I often practice gratitude with it. And I say, wow, I feel like if I hadn't lived here, I wouldn't have been able to work on myself the amount I've been able to work on myself by living in a city like New York.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think from, I guess we've known each other for like nearly 2 years, maybe.
No, it's our year anniversary.
Is it our year anniversary?
Of
Amazing.
Our eventful meeting in London.
What a time to be alive! And I think in that time, you're definitely one of those freelancers who's really lived that life. I think that a lot of people would look at you working from Mexico and working from. I couldn't even keep up with where you were, to be honest, when we were chatting. But like you've really pushed the boundaries of what like remote working are. How do you feel fortunate to be able to have done that? Like, how has that resonated?
I do. I don't think I practice gratitude enough for what I've been able to do in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
I think for so long I was just focused on, wow, I've been working full time for so many years. I'm going to go out there and live my life. I don't think I realized that the way I'm living my life is exactly what I wanted when I was, sitting at my desk at, 8:30 every day, which was great. But I do practice gratitude for the life that I've lived, and in all honesty, I'm making it up, but I'm just making it up with a smile on my face.
Yeah,
because everybody is making it up.
Absolutely,
everyone's making it up from the junior account person to the CEO.
Yeah,
it's just if you doing it with a smile on your face.
Yeah. It's definitely doing this job, like meeting lots of people over over the years. You do. I think when I first started out, I was obviously like really cautious of speaking to senior people because I'd be like, oh God, they're going to really test my knowledge here and I've got no fucking idea what I'm talking about. but you soon realise that everyone's just a human being. We're all made of the same stuff. We all have we have different interests, but ultimately, at like a human level, you can have a conversation with anyone.
Anybody.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
And you can reach out to anybody.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think way too often we feel a sense of imposter syndrome, but those senior people that you talk about, if you're a junior talent or a mid-level talent that wants advice, that wants mentorship, most people are open to it. You know, obviously time is a commodity that is increasingly scarce in the world that we live in.
Yeah.
But if I go back, all those years ago to how I got my start in this career, it was a combination of reaching out to people on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean it. Twitter. There was one time, one of my first internships, I met someone while I was doing a wine tasting, and they were someone that I offered wine to, and we got talking, and that's what led to things,
Yeah.
Every opportunity, no matter where we are in life, could be a possibility for something new.
Absolutely.
I think that is one way that I definitely live my life.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, London is a very different place to New York. Like, I've found that, and the one thing that's amazing about New York is how well networked everyone is. It's crazy. Like, I'll go to a meeting, and within a few minutes they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know that person," and "Oh, you've worked with them," and blah blah blah. And everyone's really good at networking themselves and pushing themselves to meet with people. It's genuinely like amazing. I've never experienced anything like it, which makes our jobs quite difficult because everyone knows everyone. But I think there's just like a culture of going out on networking and finding out new stuff, which I think is like infectious for sure. Have you found that sort of same thing?
I think it's an American phenomenon.
Is it? Okay.
Because you see that same phenomenon in creative industries in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in Miami, in New York. Obviously, I think there's different levels that come with the energy of each of those cities. But New York, I think if you're an interesting person doing interesting creative things in the world, whether that be regardless of industry, the pool becomes small. A lot of people end up knowing each other, even across generations as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that we're all 4 steps removed anyway, aren't we? And it's even closer within a creative space. So
totally,
I definitely feel that. I think that we've talked about New York for the entire week, so we'll move away from.
I'm always happy to talk aspects of New York. Yeah,
but like, okay, we'll do one final New York question.
Okay.
What is the difference between New York and other places that you've worked? So let's choose let's choose somewhere far afield. Obviously, Australia is somewhere you're from. What do you think is a major difference between those two?
I've been meditating on this a lot lately about the concept of time.
Okay.
I think time is different here.
Yeah.
I think mainly due to the amount that we can cram into a day or to an hour or to a minute in New York is like nowhere else in the world.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that. Definitely. With like our time here, like we've managed to pack in so much in such a short space of time, which is kind of overwhelming when you're not used to it. Like, I think it takes some getting used to. If we're talking about you growing and like moving around in your career, what do you still think you're learning? Like, what's the thing that you're like, wow, I want to know more about that. Like, that's something that I'm passionate about.
I think this is going to be cliche, but I think that my first response in what I'm learning about and what I'm always learning about is myself. Because I think, as you move through life and you get to know yourself in different ways, that really does affect, what we do. And I think as strategists, because it is such a field of being able to translate and understand what's going on around the world and translate that into actionable creative steps. I think knowing yourself is really important. I think it is. I think there's a lot of people in our industry that do not know themselves, and I think that reflects in the work. I think as I get older, I start to get more curious about how I can stay on top of knowing things. There's only... reading articles and listening to podcasts will only take you so far.
Yeah.
I find making sure that there are people around me that can open my eyes to interesting things. Going and seeing interesting things helps me expand my knowledge. And increasingly, I'm starting to think more about how can I go and do more professional courses as that aspect of education is continually being democratized.
Yeah.
What does that mean for me? What are the skills there? You know, it may not necessarily mean, you know, going away for 2 years and doing an MBA, but what does learning new professional skills look like? Particularly as a freelancer, the joy of working at an agency is that part of that model is, you know, hopefully if you're an agency with a great planning department, is that they are constantly trying to educate and make the team better by exposing them to new things. When you're a freelancer, you got to do it on your own. Yeah. That's one thing that I've definitely realized lately.
Yeah, I think I definitely resonate with that kind of self-growth part. I think the last 2.5 years for myself has been like the biggest growth that I've had in terms of like actually understanding who the fuck I am. Because I think that for a long time you don't, because you don't, you know, more experiences allow you to realize that it's not this kind of little box that you've been in for a long time. You know, I guess going out and seeing the world like you have is helpful, you know, and like experiences like they shape you to like a real you know, to a massive degree. What if you weren't in New York as a strategist, if you were living in your different life, what would that be? What do you think that if you could change, what would it be?
What is the fantasy life?
Yeah.
The fantasy life is a real fantasy.
Okay.
The fantasy life is I'm on an island in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
I have a farm.
Oh, okay.
On that farm, there are about 100 goats.
Okay.
Of those goats, they're very cute goats.
Okay.
We can make
only
cheese.
cute goats allowed.
Only cute goats allowed,
Yep.
but cute is subjective, right? You know, they've got cute spirits. We make cheese. There's a disco. Like I have this world in my head that if things get too overwhelming, I go to this farm. And it is funny. There are a lot of people that I speak to that, you know, increasingly in New York as we get older and yet again the stimulation, we want the exact opposite of it. That's why so many people have homes upstate, homes in the country that they can go and escape and just recalibrate their brain before coming back in the city and getting back on that mechanical bull again.
It's so needed. Like it's so needed, that like kind of escapism, that relaxing moment where you're just like, oh, I need to do something different to this, you know, the madness as you riding the bull is like, if you fall off, you can fall off pretty hard, I think, aren't you, in certain ways?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to be, when you're going to get on it, you got to have an objective. You got to know what you're going to do, you know?
Yeah.
I think my family, my father's a Greek immigrant.
Okay.
And my family lives in a small island in Greece. And I think when I come back to this farming reference is because of the degree of separation that I have to family members that live that life. And I see the way that they live their life, and it's a much more of a simple life, but it's a beautiful life.
Absolutely,
being able to grow everything and live in a self-sustaining economy. It's funny, sometimes when I'll be in meetings, particularly with larger companies in the most bizarre boardrooms around the country, I'll think about them and I'll just think about the contrast.
I had such a similar experience recently. I went to like super rural Spain for a week. I took my bike and I just went out cycling every day, and it was like the most amazing week I've had in so long. It was like the most detached feeling I've ever had. But weirdly, at the start of the week, I kind of had this level of like, not arrogance, but like I'd be cycling around getting super rural, and I'd be like, what do people actually do here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you do to occupy yourself? And it's because I'm so programmed to always be so visually or like stimulated by likes and pushes and pokes and all this sort of stuff. Like it took me a while to acclimatize to like that feeling of like being okay, just existing.
You're programmed to hustle.
Yeah.
But it's actually okay to not.
Yeah, 100%.
To just exist, to be, you know, for the most exciting thing in the day, to go and pick your, you know, ripe tomatoes in the backyard.
Yeah.
And then slowly prepare a meal for your family.
Yeah.
That's delicious for me. If
100%.
I think about that as a possibility.
Yeah.
But I think it doesn't have to be either or.
Mm.
I think as we increasingly reconsider the balance between work and life, we can do both. And, you know, I hope with a lot of the younger generation in our industry as they continue with all of this quiet quitting phenomenon, I hope the people at the top listen to it, because someone like me, I've been talking about this for a while, the importance of balance. We don't need to be burning the candle at both ends. You know, there's time for burning, and, you know, if we burn strategically together, let's do it. But if we burn, let's take days off and, you know, learn to breathe again, and then we come back and do it again.
Yeah.
I think the going back to your stimulation and the hustle, there's an expectation that we must be on at all times. And it's just not, you know, in a city like New York, it's just, it adds to an even more overwhelming sense of stimulation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, passion, because I think passion projects like keep this industry going, like genuinely. I think that, especially within like that whole sort of offshoot of COVID and people like realizing, oh fuck, I can actually do stuff that I'm really enjoying again. You know, I'm launching jewelry businesses, or, you know, I'm starting, you know, like really interesting my own fashion brand or whatever it is. It's like, it was super interesting. Like, what keeps you like creatively fresh other than traveling or opening a farm?
There's a couple of things there.
Yeah.
And I think going back to your point before, a friend and old boss of mine who's one of the founders of Mother New York, Paul Malmstrom, he used to talk about this often, the fact that in order to have outputs, you have to have inputs. And I do think that's really important. And I think if we go back to what we were talking about earlier about, you know, have strategists having ferocious curiosity, that curiosity, everyone has it in different ways. For me, it is quite ferocious. For me, it's, I like to devour the world, particularly through arts and culture. Music is something that I'm really passionate about, both creating it and both seeing it and experiencing it.
Yeah.
That's both live music and that's also nightlife. I think as a queer person, the dance floor for me is almost like my church.
Yeah.
It's a place where I commune. It's a place where I gather. It's a place where I pray. And it's a place that, honestly, if I'm going there regularly, it makes me better at my job. Because I get to see the world. I get to see how people, you know, express their bodies and their spirits when they're not worried about, you know, making their 5 p.m. deadline, which is important. It's super important to do both. But for me, you know, depending on where I'm at in my life, it can change. You know, for me, where I am in my life currently, travel is really important to me, particularly coming out of the pandemic. Being mobile again and seeing the world and exposing myself to different perspectives and different cultures and different belief systems. For me, where I'm at right now is important. This time next year, it may not be as much of a priority. It'll always be a priority, but it may not necessarily be the central focus as it is for me right now. But sure. I do think music is super important to me.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I think that growing up in near London, you know, there's a level of prudishness to music and clubbing, you know, and just like
Royal Albert Hall, darling.
Well, exactly. And I think that as I've grown older and I've experienced more stuff, like I had an amazing trip to Berlin, which like was the most eye-opening experience I think I've ever had from a music and cultural perspective. But the resonating thing was that people just were there to have like a good time.
Totally.
And it's nothing more complicated or complex than that. You know, there's something beautiful about removing that kind of want to go and sleep with someone, essentially. Like, you know,
or it
like
could be both.
It can be both, but it didn't feel like it was that the whole time. Whereas I think with the culture around like clubbing in the UK is broken. You know, there's places, you know, and sort of being in London for a long time, you discover those places. But I think there's something so amazing about like that community of people who are there to just experience music and have a good time.
And it's about that community, right? It's about self-expression. It's about connection. I do think the way society has deemed nightlife and club life as this kind of irresponsible, grow the fuck up kind of world.
Yeah.
And the way that they really focus on sex and drugs being a central point, it's there. Let's not sugarcoat it. Is there. But I do think often the deeper spiritual motivation as to why people go and express themselves on the dance floors or connect to music in that way is increasingly starting to be talked about more, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing it in luxury brands in Europe this season. You know, we're seeing it happen through design. You know, people talking about the transformative power of music and how it changes us. You know, even just bringing it back to strategy. You know, over my career, and I think everyone that's most probably listening to this podcast has a different strategy for how they use music to help assist, help enhance, help augment their own creative practice.
Yeah.
But it's so funny, you know, one of my really good friends who's an amazing copywriter called Marissa, you know, depending on the nature or subject matter of the client that she's working on, she listens to different genres of music to get her in the zone.
Yeah.
I still remember a couple of years ago, Mother was working on a hydroponic soil for weed growers on the underground.
Great.
And it was all sort of borrowing on the codes of sort of rock and roll codes from an aesthetic standpoint and from a tonal standpoint. So for days on end, while she was developing the tone of voice for the brand, she just listened to AC/DC on repeat.
Amazing.
And I'm like, I love that approach to sort of how music can enhance what we do.
Absolutely.
You know, even to this point, you know, I'd say for a good 8 years, if I need to get into the zone and work on something, there is one album that I come back to.
I have this as well.
I listen to it and repeat. It's like,
Yeah. I mine is kind of like this is like a pure focus. I don't need like BPM. I'm talking about like checking out and being in a different place.
Yeah.
So mine is it An Awesome Wave by Alt J? That album is like my go-to.
Right on.
That is what is yours?
If I'm need to work
Yeah.
and I need to sort of get work done and be creative, it's Bonobo's album North Borders.
Mm-hmm.
I think the North Borders. If I need to be calm and flow, there's an amazing American jazz pianist called Robert Glasper.
Okay.
I just put on Robert Glasper's music and I can go into a state of flow.
Yeah. A friend of mine listens to the Interstellar soundtrack.
Okay.
Which I think would be a bit too much for me.
If they want to go into the expansiveness in space and let their brain go there.
Yeah.
The point before about dancing as well, you know, I think bringing some of those practices into work is super cathartic as well. You know, during the pandemic when we were sitting in front of laptops all day, just smiling at the green dot, otherwise known as Zoom.
Yeah.
I found having dance breaks throughout the day.
That's amazing.
Super, super healing and super energizing to get through the day. You know, there is freeing power in being a silly idiot for a couple of minutes.
100%.
There's power in laughter. There's power moving through your body. You know, when I was at 72 and Sunny in Amsterdam, a couple of the strategists and I, often a couple of times a week at 3:30, when you're experiencing that sort of mid-afternoon malaise, we'd stop and dance for a song in the lobby. Even so that amazing jolt of energy, not only for ourselves, but then how infectious that was to other people was super amazing.
Yeah.
Try and practice that.
I'd love
Dancing
to
on a
see
city
that.
bike around New York is also something that I like to do.
Yeah, I think there's like anything that sort of checks you out from the reality of what you're doing is great. You could do breath work, you can do a gym class, you can do, you know, go and draw something. I think that, you know, having that space to do something different and just shake your body up a little bit is although I'm not sure I could work again after doing like an intense breath work session, because I think that I am on the moon for about 40 minutes after that.
But isn't that amazing though, the power of breath work and how it can sort of open up all the different dimensions of your body.
Yeah.
You know, maybe doing a 10-minute breath work may not work for you.
Yeah.
But you could do a minute's worth of breath work, and that may just recenter you, recalibrate you, and let you go into
absolutely
and it's so great. I don't know if you've heard, there's an app called Open, which specializes in breath work. It's a beautiful design.
Really? Wow.
But, you know, every now and then, you know, if I'm in the middle of the day and I need a jolt of inspiration, I don't want to go into a death scroll, I'll just open that app and I'll look at, okay, cool, they've got a 10-minute walking meditation. I'm going to go for a walk around the neighborhood. Or they've got a minute breath work. I need a moment of recalibration right now.
Yeah.
Let's sit on my couch and sort of focus in.
I think that is, as I'm getting older, when I meet people who do breath work or meditation or something that's not just going to the gym and lifting weights up, I think that I gravitate towards those people because I know where you have to be in your life to be open to doing stuff like that. I don't know if that's like a strange thing to say, but I think I really resonate with people who take care of themselves mentally, because I think it's far more important than anyone realizes.
But I think it's everything, right? Mentally, spiritually, emotionally, gastronomically, musically.
Yeah.
It is important. Life can be tough.
It can.
So,
it can.
Those that do take the time, to focus on those things and prioritize those things for themselves, there's a natural energy that just attracts.
Yeah.
People like that to each other.
Yeah, and I think because Ollie, who founded Unknown, he's been a big sort of persuader for some of the other guys to be like, you should really try this because it's kind of interesting. And like, I remember the breathwork thing I avoided for so long because I was like, this is a load of shit. Like, this can't be. And I genuinely, I do it consistently now, like multiple times a week. But I've had like full on out of body experiences doing breathwork. It's like the most powerful thing I've ever done. And like coming around just being like, holy shit, what's just happened to me?
But isn't it amazing though? There's not only the physiological kind of benefits of doing it as well, but there is a psychedelic element as well to it.
Yeah.
If you think about it, okay, cool. I want to go to a different plane of existence right now.
Yeah.
The fact that you can do that from this chair, you and I, if we wanted to right now.
Yeah.
Could activate our bodies and our brains and we could go into our own metaverse right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is so weird, but so awesome, so awesome. One thing that we often like to ask on the Untalented podcast is work that you're jealous of or work that you're jealous that you didn't create. So is there a project or a campaign or a brand that you're jealous of not creating yourself or being part of?
There's a lot over the years. I'm lucky to have been a part of some really great ones early in my career. And currently, but I often think back to the creation of Colours magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember Colours magazine, but it was part of Benetton. So I think of Oliviero Toscani and Tibor Kalman, all of the work that they did for Benetton, that series of campaigns, even the ingeniousness of creating that magazine, which was, I still think is one of the most genius creative solutions to, showcasing a brand in a different way. I look at that work and I often cite it and see it as inspiration for me to be better in what I do.
Yeah.
That I want to see the world like the way that they saw the world, and that we should present the world like that, because that's the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot has followed that, right? There's a lot of inspiration that's been taken from showing different people and from different backgrounds. I think that it's a fascinating, it's a timestamp, right? When things started to change from a cultural perspective. Not from a cultural perspective, but like seeing it from a cultural perspective, I think. There
is an aspect of fantasy that people want. You know, that is essentially what we do in this industry.
Yeah.
But I do think, there is so much bullshit that is just not needed. And there is beauty in real life, and there is beauty in showcasing that through amazing storytelling and amazing film craft and amazing design and amazing thinking. And it takes bravery to do that.
100%. Absolutely. I think that, and I think as we're humans are getting more used to looking at screens, I think our appreciation for things that look nice from a digital or a brand is only getting heightened. Through our history as humans, beauty has been seen visually in nature, and but now we have so much stimulation from new brands or designs or campaigns that I think our bar is getting set higher and higher, which means that people are having to work harder and harder to make things current and fresh and cool. And I think that that's challenging for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just fascinating. I was having a conversation recently with a creative director who worked in a design team within an advertising department, and he was like, basically my entire career has been fighting for design with creatives, and he's like, it's getting harder and harder now because the bar is getting higher and higher in terms of what good design looks like. And I think that's like a wonder where it will go next. Where do we go next with that?
What category will we be designing next?
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, there's lots of chat about the metaverse, but who knows what that's going to look like in the flesh? Well, it's never going to be in the flesh, is it? Cool. So, final section of the day.
Yes.
Weird name. It's called Elephant Vomit. I don't know how we came up. I don't know how we came up with this name. Right. I don't really know what the name means. Essentially, to me, what it means is we want to know 3 things. Maybe not 3 things. 2 things. It could be that you passionately dislike or hate.
Okay.
Mine, if you want me to start,
please.
I have a real problem with all-you-can-eat restaurants. Not the ones like the ones that have like a multitude of different like foods. We're talking Chinese, we're talking Mexican, we're talking sushi. Like a place that serves that much variation in food is not going to be good food, I don't think. That's my one.
Okay. So, I like the specificity of that.
Yeah.
Do you not like buffets in general?
I think in the right setting, a buffet's fine.
Okay.
Buffet breakfast.
What about a breakfast buffet
on
a European vacation?
Yeah.
Like
I'm all down for that.
That's living life to its purest essence.
Yeah, it really is. Really is. But yeah, I'm keen to find out yours.
Mine are a bit strange.
Okay, great. We like strange.
Well, my first one is one of the things that I dislike most in the world is being woken in the morning to the sound of car tires on wet concrete.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah, living in Lower Manhattan, sounds ricocheted off buildings, and that sounds specifically if I am in those delicate moments of waking up in the morning, just hearing that rubber.
Yeah,
merge with that asphalt and with the sound of the water echoing off it. That's something that I very much hate.
Yeah, that's an awful noise. I can hear that inside my brain now. Yeah.
I'm happy I'm making you uncomfortable.
Yeah. Thanks for that one.
Are we just flowing into them,
do I
need a prompt for my hatred?
No. Yeah, that was a great one.
Okay.
That's probably the most. That you said mine was specific. That is the most specific one I think we've had.
Okay.
So number 2. What's your second?
My second one. I need to clear my voice because this one comes from the heart. This one comes from the stomach. I have a problem with Mediterranean restaurants. So I was inspired by your catch-all for all you can eat.
Yeah.
I think being Greek Australian, I believe in the specificity of, showcasing the beauty of a nation's or a culture's cuisine.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what a Mediterranean restaurant is.
No, it's quite a vast expanse of geographical location.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I'm like, what is that? Have a point of view. Like there's an amazing restaurant in Neal's Yard in London called the Barbary. That's a great take on a Mediterranean cuisine following the Barbary coast. There's a concept there.
Yeah.
But throwing, an octopus with some paprika and some hummus and a gyro and an eggplant parmigiana on a menu, I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah.
Yeah, I think our levels of culinary frustration, I think, are quite similar. I think there's similarities there in what frustrates us.
Do you want a third, or should we keep on trauma bonding over food? Because I could continue with the food as well.
Let's try not to go for food, and I'll think of another one for me as well.
All right,
we'll go back to back.
Okay, so do you want me to go, or are you going to go?
You go first because I don't know what mine is yet.
I hate death metal.
Oh no!
I know, and there's increasingly as I've grown older, there are people that I love that love it, and I try and create space for them. And I'm reading your body language right now, and I'm wondering whether I need to create space for you right now.
Yeah, I think you might.
Do you need space being made for you?
Yeah, I think the problem that we can go back to back here, but I think death metal, I'm with you. It's kind of heavy, but I'm all about a bit of metal.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it's a guilty pleasure. A bit like really dirty drum and bass.
Okay.
Those
Mate, I love dirty drum and bass.
see, they're kind of intertwined.
There's something about the energy, the vocal energy of death metal for me.
Yeah.
I'm a sunshine energy human.
Yeah.
So there is a darkness of death metal that just doesn't resonate with my spirit. But, you know, as a kid, it was a very much, I'm like, oh, you like death metal, we can't be friends.
Yeah.
But as I've grown older, I've realized, you know what, there are a lot of people in my life that don't necessarily need to like the same things as me. And I can love them, I can respect them, I can appreciate them. And if you're my best friend and you like death metal, you know what? There are a lot of other things that I love about you, but I just don't like the music that you like. Yeah. And that's A-okay.
That is fine. Well, I can't think of my last one.
You can't think of yours?
But I'm going to say thank you very much, because this has been wonderful. You've shared a lot of interesting things, and now we can't be friends because you don't like death metal.
No. Or we can start putting the procedures in place to learn how we can work through that conflict together. I believe in you. Woody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well,
thank you for having me.